Hey everyone, welcome back to the session on how to win any argument. In today's session, we are going to discuss how to gain the absolute and self control if you are in an argument. Because winning begins by controlling how you will be. What separates the amateur from the pros is self mastery, how you walk the valleys, how you maneuver the turns, how you are able to get out of your own way. And in this session, you will discover the empowering secret of still center and answers of these following questions. What are those questions? See, what separates the amateurs from the pros is self mastery. What makes separate, and then the pros, that how you can get self mastery, how to walk in the valleys of argument, and how you will maneuver, or you would maneuver the turns in these valleys or otherwise in the argument, and how you are able to get out of your own way. So here, let's meet a character that is David, because he knows the secret of the ancient mastery. That's why the Tao Te Ching said, mastering others require force, mastering the self needs strength. You won't find a single Maharishi, you sweatshirt hanging in my closest or closet. I have never recited Zen Buddhist counts, tried to be in touch with my chi energy, or experienced the great light show. I'm a khaki and leather laced utilitarian, or utilitarians, a reality based, prove it to me kind of guy. Nonetheless, even more impressive that David's credentials, former university professor and law school dean, was his in style. He had handled himself in a day of end-to-end meetings. His acute awareness and the subtle things he picked upon, how he easily overcome resistance and at the same time galvanized us all, how he knew exactly what to say, and his special sense of how and when to say is very important. How David got others to feel what he felt, believe what he believed, think what he thought. So, when you have to gain this absolute and total self control in your way, you have to prove yourself that what you know exactly what you say, and that the special sense how and when what you have to say, and that you have presents that real feeling to the people what you felt, and the people, you make the people same as you believed and think what they thought, or what you thought, make the people think about that. I later discovered that David's way was the way of ancient Asian masters. The ancient masters were subtle, mysterious, profound, and responsible. Watchful like a man crossing a winter stream, alert like a man of danger. courteous, like visiting guests. What I am about to share with you might sound like a mantra from a misty mountaintop. But if you are willing to be unconditionally receptive, you too will discover why David's style is so effective. Are you ready? Take a few slow, deep breaths. Imagine that deep within you there is an oasis of inner calm. Imagine, too, a dimension of detached awareness, a dimension that makes it possible to see things from the vantage of a player on the field as well as observer on the sidelines. To imagine is to self-empower. You have just actualized what the ancient master sought, a still center. Now imagine having the power to be aware of how you feel. Feel hostile because I feel angry because that is a big question here. Imagine having the power to respond rather than react. When you react, the event controls you. When you respond, you are in control. How you choose to perceive a situation will often determine its outcome. Imagine having the power to control your anger and emotions, to be aware of your gut impulses. What he is saying makes me want to be able to lower your voice as others are raising theirs. Imagine having the power to aware of the risks and consequences of giving way to your impulses. If I give in to my impulses, then what will probably happen is missing. Imagine having the power to separate what is important from what is urgent. The power to pause, to observe before acting, to be aware of alternative solutions and their benefits. The best thing would be for me to, you need to understand, you need to think that what is the best thing for you. Nick, a Midwestern television station manager, invited me back to his office after an on the set interview. The playing on Nick's wall shows somehow said it all. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up knowing it must run faster than the lion or be killed. Every morning, a lion awakens knowing it must outrun the slowest gazelle or starve to death. It doesn't matter if you are a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you do better be running. Next plank can be summed up in three words: because of businesses as usual, confrontation with people who will argue with anything, or even worse, who will argue about nothing. Confrontation with people who argue because they would rather be right than reasonable, the bossy or the bold leader who reject your idea before you have had a chance to develop them. The bozos, the insensitive, the arrogant, the exhausting people we treat having to talk to. Please, who drain our energy, whirling people who make us feel anxious when they leave a message for us to call them back. People who cause us to be more self critical in their presence. If you have a job without conflict, then you don't really have a job. Each of us have aggravation, problems, frustration. Each of our lives is made up of peaks and the valleys, twists and turns. There will be days you will play hopscotch with the unicorns, days when you will play Tokyo through your boss's Godzilla. And what makes us different from each other is how we walk the valley, how we maneuver the turns, and how we carry the load. You can't always control the conflict, but with a still center, you can always control your reaction to it. In the morning, the sun will come up again. It is routine and everyday. In the morning, the sun will come up again. Nick, I am not telling you you will be able to stop the race, but I do promise that as you discover the way to win, you will become one hell of a runner. So you need to head up here. The absolute and total control flows from a still a still center. Having a still center doesn't mean you will always be in total control of the conflicts itself. It means you will always be in total control of your reaction. So, people, here when you are going to determine that what is your reaction to the argument, and that when you have to get to the absolute and total control, that time you should not be controlled by the conflict itself, nor self control means you are totally control of your reaction to it. Several ways a still centers keeps you from getting in your own way. The Tao teaching said, knowing others is wisdom, or knowing the self is enlightenment. So, if you have to enlighten, you have to know yourself rather than knowing other people. But knowing other people, that is the wisdom. But first, you should know yourself to enlightenment, get that enlightenment and the personal mastery. What are those seven steps or seven ways a still center keep you from getting in your own way? So that first one is you get in your own way when you are acting under the influence. Did your old grey suit, the one whose trousers have a shiny seat, suddenly become an almost new design or model than you made a lost luggage claim at the airport? Did your tax return overvalue the long absolute stereo and the computer equipment that you donated to Goodwill? Do you stick or skate on moral thin ice by saying, but everyone does it? Your answer to these questions, the future of affirmation or affirmative action, the rights and wrongs of observation or abortion, gay marriage, the role of Americans military and economic might, the style of shock jock Howard Stern, human cloning, the legalization of marijuana, the death penalty, how you see things big and small is shaped by your influence. What happened, what you feel, what you thought, mostly that are programming in our mind from the influences. Who influence us? This is the question now, and has a series from the psychological Dr. Spock to star Derek Mr. Spock, from the clever to previous and butthead, the television star who introduced the world as much to be prepubescent or prepubescent vernacular. From Oz's Nelson, early television's Adventures of Oz and Harriet, to Oz's Ocean, the Oceans. We are influenced by the Howard Stern Fat Man and the South Park's Cat Crackman, a cartoon front and third gender. One episode of this cable show is titled The Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut, and we are influenced by the outcome of the OG Simpson trials and by the Simpson, a dysfunctional cartoon family. In one typical display of Simpson styles parenting, Homer Simpson told his daughter Lisa that it is proper to steal from people you don't like. At the FBI Academy, agents are taught that everybody is AUI, mean action under the influence. You need to know what is AUI, action under the influence. Not too long ago, means it was not too many ago where the everybody is AUI, mean action under the influence. Not too long ago, I was negotiating the purchase of a palatial beachfront house for my client. It was once owned by one of the Hollywood big stars. The asking price was 8 million when we were within $100,000 or so of making a deal. The seller said, I will accept your offer to buy if we close the sale in March, but you let me use the garden in May to entertain my East Coast relatives. The seller was UAI. UAI stand for Action Under the Influence. He had an emotional need to show the house to his relative who had not yet been vested there. Brain, our remodeling corrector, had just installed a new sink, lighting system, and appliances in our kitchen. At the end of the day, the kitchen was filled with old copper towing soda cans and styrofoam sandwich wrappings and plastic bags and boxes or refuse that Bran meticulously separated and deposited into the three types of recycling trash containers. Bran seems to be a true friend of the environment, but when I walked Bran to his truck, I saw that it had oil license plate. Knowing lived and worked in Los Angeles, I just had to ask why I keep it registered in oil. That way, I don't have to comply with the California strict air quality emissions requirements. None of those damn smoke check for me, he said. Brain Drew was AUI, action under influence. While we are talking about trash, no matter how hard I try or you have tried, there is a lot of modern art that you and I will never understand. But then I am not alone. You are with me. The artist Gustav Metazer had his work readied for display at the Tate Modern London's famed art museum. The day before the exhibition opened, a janitor threw out a bag of garbage that was incorporated as an integral part of Metazer's artwork. The cleaner said he thought it was trash. We are all AUI, action under influences. And one man's throw our trash is part of another man's celebrated artwork. Some historical examples that the Ford Motor Company was AUI, action and influence. It didn't run any Lincoln Mercury ads in the few New Yorker for 6 months. The magazine's offenses. It ran a rock and rap article adjacent to a Mercury advertisement. The article quoted sexually graphic song lyrics from the group 9 Inch Nails. Omega Watches was AUI. It pulled its advertising from British Vogue. It didn't want to be a magazine that featured skeletal models of anoxic proportions. Omega found it extremely distasteful to identity or idealize slenderness to extreme that it encouraged real women to hate their own bodies. Redbook was AUI, action under influence. It was concerned how its subscriber would react to a cover featuring Pierce Brosnan or Brosnan and his dead girlfriend and now wife as she breastfed their son. Redbook's editor saw tenderness in the photo, but he also knew that there are some people who are uncomfortable with breastfeeding. I didn't want to force that on anyone who is a subscriber. The solution to different red book covers were printed. The newsstand edition shows mom covered with wave printed, and the newsstand edition shows mom breastfeeding, while subscriber got a picture of the couple simply holding the baby. Titleist golf balls was AUI. It wasn't warned by Sports Illustrated that the magazine was running an article on how the Dennis Shore Golf Tournament in Palm Spring has become the unofficial annual spring break for an estimated 20,000 lesbians, calling the article inexcusable. The title is cancelled more than 1 million in advertisements. So now, the important thing is that you are AUI, action under influence. Your influence are a part of what makes you tick. A skill center empowers you to be less reactive to the influence, to be more analytic, top, step back, and make sense of your motives and priorities. So these are the your influences. The way number two is that you get in your own way when you see things the way you want them to be. How is it? The renewing my driver's license was a traumatic experience. My test answer was right on. It was the application's hair color question that I blew. I look at myself in the mirror every morning. I have always had brown hair, but the clerk who took my application booked me over, whited out brown, and quickly typed in grey. Hey, my hair is brown, I insisted. The clerk fired back. You don't have brown hair. You have mostly grey with some tints of brown. Hair are there. My mirror reflected what I wanted to see. So here is something head shaking for you. You see things the way you want them to be. And still, center empowers you to look at yourself without your rose colors. So what you have to do, you have to focus on your still center. That empower you to look at yourself without your rose control. Ray-Bans. Knowing your real strengths and weaknesses helps you manage both more powerful. You get in your own way when you color the world with your expectation. This is the base third. We don't want to change the way we view the world. That's why we will do almost everything or anything in clinging the cherished nation. The country's reaction to the Miley incident is historical, proof that sometimes the result is truly ludicrous. Charlie Company's 150 soldiers, led by the Lieutenant William Kelly, stormed into the Vietnam village of Miley. The Miley bloodbath went on for 4 hours. There was no resistance from the villagers. When it was over, number of the Viet Cong soldiers encountered at Miley. Zero. Number of civilian villagers killed 504. The number of the American casualty one and soldier shot himself in the foot. Number of the weapons confiscated from the villager 3. In the subsequent court material, Lieutenant Kelly was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison for his part in the murder of 22 civilians. After he had served 3 days in the prison, Kelly was moved to Fort Benning, Georgia, where he was held under the house arrest in a comfortable apartment. Many couldn't believe that Kelly was anything other than a hero in the struggle against the communist aggression. A record, the Battle Hymn of Lieutenant Kelly, became a modest hit. Protest rallies were staged on his behalf. Several state legislatures passed a resolution seeking clemency after having served 3 years under house arrest. He was wounded. Kelly later went on the college lecture circuit at $2,000 a speech and appeared on the cover of the Enquirer, surrounded by Asian children. Why and how could this happen in 1968? We expected and wanted to believe that American boys are always just and righteous. What happened at Miley was inconsistent with our expectations and what we wanted to believe. Have your expectation changed in light of the obvious influenced or inflicted on the detainees by a handful of US military person? at Iraq Abu Ghraib prison in 2003. So handshaking is for the hey that you color the word with your expectations. You tend to accept as credible and evidence and support your beliefs. So too, you give shrift to evidence that contradicts or challenges what you believe. A still center empower you to consider the way you believe what you believe.